My name is Barbara Hughes. I'm 67 years old. At 9:46 on Thanksgiving night, I stood alone in my kitchen with both hands in a sink full of greasy roasting pans, while my 3 adult children sat in the living room arguing over who should get my house when I died. Not whether. Who. The turkey carcass was still on the counter. The gravy had congealed in the silver boat. Mashed potatoes crusted along the edge of a blue serving bowl that had belonged to my mother. Cranberry sauce had stained one of the good linen napkins. Someone had left pumpkin pie filling smeared on the dining table, and my youngest grandson had dropped a roll under the buffet, where my dog, Jasper, had already found it and looked guilty enough to confess to crimes he had not committed. I had been awake since 5:15 that morning. I had brined the turkey, peeled 12 pounds of potatoes, made 2 kinds of stuffing, because my daughter Amy hated sausage. But my son Michael said Thanksgiving without sausage stuffing was basically lunch, baked 3 pies, roasted green beans, set out appetizers, chilled wine I did not drink, warmed rolls, polished silver, pressed tablecloths, arranged place cards, and remembered that my oldest son David's wife had decided last year that gluten made her spiritually foggy. So I made a gluten-free apple crisp too. No one thanked me for that. They arrived late, all of them. David and his wife, Lauren, came 40 minutes late because traffic was insane, though they lived 18 minutes away and had passed exactly 1 stoplight. Michael arrived an hour late with his girlfriend Trisha, and 2 bottles of wine he placed on the counter like a contribution, then drank most of himself. Amy came last with her husband Paul, their 3 children, and a store-bought veggie tray still in its plastic container, which she handed me with a sigh and said, "Sorry, Mom, I've been drowning." Drowning. She had not cooked a single thing. By 2:30, everyone was seated at my dining table, where I had placed little handwritten gratitude cards beside each plate because I still believed in small gestures, even when the people receiving them had stopped noticing. By 2:45, Michael said the turkey was a little dry. By 2:51, Lauren asked whether the gravy had dairy because she was quote 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 quote. By 3:04, Amy said, "Mom, you really should let us help next year," while continuing to sit perfectly still. By 3:20, David asked if I had considered updating the kitchen because this layout is not great for resale of my kitchen while eating my food. I laughed softly because I thought he was joking. He was not. At 9:46, after dessert, after coffee, after my grandchildren had run through the hallway with sticky hands and my children had migrated to the living room without clearing so much as their own plates, I heard Michael say, "Honestly, if Mom ever sells, we should keep it in the family." Amy answered, "She's not selling. She loves this house." David said, "That's exactly why we need a plan before emotions get involved." A plan. For my house. The house my late husband Frank and I had bought when we were 29. The house where I had raised them, nursed fevers, paid mortgages, patched holes, survived widowhood, and hosted every birthday, Easter, Christmas, graduation party, and Thanksgiving for 38 years. I turned off the faucet. Water dripped from my rubber gloves. In the living room, David continued, "The house is worth at least $600 now, maybe more if we renovate. It would be stupid to just let it sit." Amy said, "I think Mom would want us all to have something." Michael laughed. "Yeah, as long as David doesn't try to manage it." Lauren said, "A trust would make sense. Avoid probate." Trisha added, "You could turn it into a rental." A rental. The dining room still had dirty plates on the table. I looked down at my hands in the sink and saw my wedding band, loose now after years of widowhood and weight loss from stress I never admitted. Frank had placed that ring on my finger 44 years earlier and promised we would build a life where everyone could come home. He had never promised they could own me with it. I did not walk into the living room and shout. I did not ask which child wanted the bedroom where I had held their father's hand while hospice explained morphine dosing. I did not remind them that I was alive, standing 20 feet away, cleaning dishes from a meal they criticized and expected. I just removed the rubber gloves, laid them neatly beside the sink, and counted 7 seconds. What they didn't know was that 3 weeks earlier, I had updated my will. Not because I was angry, because I was clear. What they did not know was that I had met with my attorney, reviewed my assets, changed the terms of the house, and created a trust that would allow me to live in peace and leave the property to someone who understood what care actually meant. And what my children truly did not know was that the house they had been quietly dividing while I scraped gravy from a roasting pan was no longer going to them outright. The next morning they would receive copies of a letter I had written in my own hand. Not a dramatic disinheritance, not revenge in the way they would describe it later. A correction. Because love and entitlement are not the same thing, this is that story. Before I tell you how my children learned that years of showing up late, criticizing the food, and leaving me with the cleanup did not earn them ownership of my home, tell me where you are watching or listening from and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment family mistook your service for obligation. And if you connect with stories about women who were betrayed, underestimated, used, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not stop hosting because they stop loving. Some women stop hosting because they finally love themselves too. I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in a brick duplex with a narrow backyard, a lilac bush by the fence, and a mother who believed food was a language people understood, even when they ignored every other one. My mother, Evelyn, cooked for everyone. Neighbors, church friends, new mothers, widowers, people recovering from surgery, people who had lost jobs, people who never once brought back the casserole dish. She was generous, warm, and quietly tired in a way I did not recognize until I became her. My father worked at the post office and died when I was 21. After that, Mom's kitchen became the center of our family's survival. I learned how to stretch food, set tables, make people feel welcome, and never sit down until everyone else had what they needed. That last lesson was the dangerous one. At 23, I met Frank Hughes at a Labor Day picnic, where he dropped an entire plate of ribs in the grass and laughed so hard at himself that I trusted him immediately. He was 25, a shop teacher with dark hair, gentle hands, and a talent for fixing things without making you feel foolish for breaking them. We married at 24 and 26. We bought our house 5 years later, a cream-colored colonial on Maple Ridge Road with black shutters, 4 bedrooms, a maple tree in the front yard, and a kitchen Frank said was ugly but honest. He promised to renovate it someday. Then children came, and the renovation money became braces, school shoes, car repairs, field trips, piano lessons, baseball uniforms, and one emergency roof replacement after a storm took half the shingles. The kitchen stayed ugly. It also fed everyone. David was born first, serious from the start, a baby who seemed offended by being unable to speak in complete sentences. Michael came 2 years later, charming, restless, always climbing something. Amy arrived when I was 35, our surprise daughter, bright-eyed and demanding in the way youngest children can be, because the whole family has already learned to move around a baby. I loved them fiercely. I still do. That is important. This story is not about a mother who stopped loving her children. It is about a mother who finally stopped confusing love with being consumed. The symbolic object in this story was my mother's blue serving bowl. It was ceramic, heavy, with tiny white flowers painted around the rim. My mother used it every Thanksgiving for mashed potatoes. After she died, it came to me wrapped in newspaper inside a cardboard box labeled Kitchen Mom's Things. I cried when I unwrapped it, not because the bowl was valuable, but because I could see her hands around it. Every Thanksgiving after that, I used the blue bowl. For years, when my children were small, one of them would ask, "Is that Grandma Evelyn's bowl?" And one would tell them the story. How she made mashed potatoes with too much butter. How she always saved the crispiest turkey skin for my father. How she believed people should not leave a table hungry or unloved. Somewhere over time, the story became background noise. The bowl became just the potato bowl. I became just the person filling it. When Frank was alive, hosting did not feel lonely. It was work, yes, but shared work. He peeled potatoes beside me the night before Thanksgiving while listening to old country music. He cleaned the turkey pan because he said no woman he loved should have to fight a roasting rack alone. He rounded up the kids to set the table. He made them carry chairs, fill water glasses, clear plates, and rinse dishes. "Your mother cooked," he would say. "Nobody leaves her with the wreck." Nobody argued with Frank. After he died, everything changed slowly. Frank passed 8 years before this story at 63 from pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis came in March. He was gone by November. That first Thanksgiving without him happened 14 days after the funeral. I told the children I could not host. David said, "Of course, Mom. Don't worry about it." Michael said, "We'll figure something out." Amy cried and said, "But Thanksgiving is Dad's favorite." "Was," she said, "is." I heard the mistake and forgave it, because grief makes language stumble. Somehow, after everyone expressed understanding, Thanksgiving still happened at my house. David ordered the turkey, but had it delivered raw because he misunderstood, quote, prepared. Michael brought beer and forgot ice. Amy made a sweet potato casserole that was still cold in the middle. I ended up cooking most of the meal because nobody knew where anything was, and because doing things felt easier than explaining how to do them while mourning. After dinner, I washed dishes alone while my children sat in the living room telling stories about Frank. At the time, I told myself it was beautiful that they were remembering him. Looking back, it was the first time they left me in the kitchen with the grief in the pans. The pattern settled in over the next years. Thanksgiving at Mom's. Christmas Eve at Mom's. Easter brunch at Mom's. Birthdays at Mom's. Mother's Day at a restaurant, if someone remembered to make a reservation, but usually at Mom's, because you like cooking anyway. I did like cooking. That became the excuse. People who use you often begin by naming something you enjoy, then making sure you can never enjoy it freely again. David became a financial planner. He married Lauren, who worked in nonprofit development and spoke in careful phrases that made selfishness sound strategic. They had one son, Nathan, now 13, who spent family gatherings with headphones on, unless Frank's old model trains were mentioned. Michael went into commercial sales, divorced once, dated often, and treated family gatherings like hotels with better food. He brought wine, opinions, and no containers for leftovers. Amy married Paul, a high school athletic director, and had 3 children in 6 years. She was always exhausted, always overwhelmed, always arriving with one child missing a shoe and one excuse already forming. I gave grace. Then more grace. Then so much grace it began to look like erasure. Each holiday had its ritual. 2 weeks before, I sent a group text. "Thanksgiving at my house at 2. Please let me know what you're bringing." David replied first. "Lauren's family has dietary changes. We'll bring a salad. They never brought salad." Michael wrote, "Put me down for wine." He brought whatever bottle was closest to the register. Amy wrote, "I'll bring something easy." Life is chaos. Sometimes she brought rolls. Once she brought nothing and said, "The baby threw up on the way out." Though the baby was 4, I shopped on Tuesday, prepped on Wednesday, cooked Thursday, smiled through criticism, packed leftovers, hugged grandchildren, and cleaned until midnight. The criticism grew casual. Not cruel enough to confront easily. Casual. "Mom, did you change the stuffing recipe? It's different." "Turkey's good, maybe just a little dry." "Why do you still make green bean casserole? Nobody eats it." "Can we not do assigned seating next year?" It feels formal. "This dining room gets so cramped." "You should really replace this carpet." "This kitchen is impossible." "Mom, why do you keep so many serving dishes?" I kept serving dishes because they kept bringing nothing. But I did not say that. I said, maybe next year we'll simplify. Then next year I did it all again. 3 years before the will change, I asked for help directly. That was new for me. In the group text, I wrote, "I need everyone to take real responsibility this Thanksgiving. David, please bring 2 side dishes. Michael, dessert and ice. Amy, appetizers and help with cleanup." David replied, "Can do." Michael replied with a thumbs up. Amy wrote, "Of course, Mom." On Thanksgiving, David brought one store-bought salad kit still in the bag and said Lauren had a migraine. Michael brought a pie from a gas station because everything else was closed. Amy brought crackers and cheese, but forgot the cheese in her refrigerator. After dinner, Amy said, "I'll help clean after I get the kids settled." She fell asleep on the couch. David took a work call. Michael went outside to smoke with Trisha. I washed dishes until my hands cracked. The next morning, I found the blue serving bowl in the sink, stained with potato starch. A fork stuck to the bottom. Someone had dumped it there without rinsing. My mother's bowl. I stood there looking at it and heard Frank's voice. Nobody leaves her with the wreck. But he was gone. And they had. That was when something began to shift. Not dramatically. Quietly. I started writing things down. Not a diary exactly. A holiday ledger. It sounds silly, but I needed to see the pattern outside my own hurt. Thanksgiving, year 6 after Frank. David brought salad kit. Complained about carpet. Michael brought gas station pie. Left before cleanup. Amy brought crackers. Forgot cheese. Slept. Cleanup alone. 2 hours, 40 minutes. Christmas Eve. Cooked for 18. Lauren asked if ham was nitrate-free. Michael took leftovers without asking. Amy left diaper in bathroom trash. No bag. David discussed house value with Paul near fireplace. Easter. Asked for brunch potluck. Made most food myself. David late. Michael hungover. Amy said, "You're so good at this, Mom," while handing me a dirty plate. Evidence is not always for court. Sometimes it is for the part of you still making excuses. The house talk started 2 years after Frank died, but became sharper over time. At first, it sounded like concern. "Mom, this house is a lot for you. Have you thought about downsizing? You could get a condo. Wouldn't it be easier not to maintain a yard?" I considered it. I truly did. The house was large. The stairs bothered my knees. The yard took work, though I paid a neighbor's son to mow. Some nights, the silence in 4 bedrooms felt like a museum of people who had left. But it was my home. Not just theirs. Mine. I knew which floorboard creaked outside the linen closet. I knew how afternoon light crossed the living room in October. I knew where Frank had marked the children's heights on the inside of the pantry door. I knew the maple tree dropped leaves into the gutter above the porch first. I knew the kitchen window stuck unless you lifted on the left side. My life was in the walls, too. David was the first to mention value. "Mom, houses in this neighborhood are going crazy," he said one Sunday after dinner, scrolling on his phone. The Peterson place sold for $580. Good for the Petersons. You could get a lot. I'm not selling. I'm just saying, from a planning standpoint, it's worth thinking about. Who's planning? He looked up. Yours, obviously. Obviously. Michael was more direct. If you ever sell, let me know first. I might want to buy in. With what money? I asked. He laughed, assuming I was joking. I was not. Amy was emotional. I just can't imagine anyone else living here, she said one Christmas, while not helping wrap leftovers. This is our family home. Our family home, said by the daughter who had not cleaned a bathroom in it since high school. I still did nothing. Then came the summer before the Thanksgiving confrontation. I fell. Not a terrible fall, not dramatic. I was carrying laundry down the basement stairs and missed the last step. I twisted my ankle, bruised my hip, and scared myself badly enough that I sat on the basement floor for 20 minutes before calling anyone. I called Amy first because she lived closest. She did not answer. I called David. Voicemail. I called Michael. He answered and said, "Can I call you back?" I'm walking into a client thing. I said, "I fell." He paused. "Are you, hurt? I looked at my swelling ankle. I need help getting up. He sighed, not cruelly, but audibly. I can be there in maybe 45. I hung up and called my neighbor, Ruth Alvarez, who was 72 and 5 feet tall. She came in through the back door, helped me up, got me ice, and sat with me until I could stand. Ruth was not family. Ruth showed up. That afternoon, after urgent care, I called my children and told them I needed to discuss the house and future planning. David said, "Finally." I noticed. At the meeting, they came prepared for my surrender. David brought a folder. Lauren brought a pen. Michael brought coffee for himself. Amy brought the children, who ran through the living room while she said, "Sorry, sitter fell through." I explained that I wanted to age in my home as long as possible, but needed practical support. Seasonal maintenance, help moving laundry upstairs, shared holiday responsibility, emergency contacts, and possibly converting the downstairs den into a bedroom if stairs became an issue. David nodded. "That's a lot of expense. Selling may be smarter." I said I want to stay. Lauren said, "Of course, but want and sustainable are different." Michael said a condo would be easier. Amy said, "But then we'd lose the house." I looked at them. "I am asking for help staying safe in my home." David said, "We're trying to help you make rational choices." Rationale. The word adult children use when their mother's wishes conflict with their inheritance strategy. I ended the meeting after 20 minutes. Nothing changed. Except me. A week later, I called my attorney, Helen Park. Helen had handled Frank's estate and had a way of speaking that made denial feel undignified. Her office smelled like paper, coffee, and lavender hand lotion. I sat across from her with my holiday ledger, my current will, and a folder of home documents. She reviewed everything quietly. Then she asked, "Barbara, what do you want?" I laughed because no one had asked me that in years. "I want to stop being treated like a holiday appliance with a house attached." Helen smiled slightly. "That is clear. Legally, what do you want?" I took a breath. "I want to live in my home. I want decisions about the house handled by someone who respects that. I want my children to receive what is fair, but not the house outright. And I want to leave something meaningful to the people who actually show up." Helen nodded. "Let's discuss options." We created a revocable living trust. I remained in full control during my lifetime. The house would not pass outright to my children. Upon my death, it would be sold, with a portion of proceeds funding a scholarship in Frank's name for vocational students pursuing trades. Because Frank had taught shop for 31 years and believed a skilled hand could save a life. Another portion would go to a local meal program my mother had volunteered with. A defined amount would be divided among my grandchildren, held for education or first home expenses. My children would receive smaller fixed distributions, not equal ownership of the house. And Ruth Alvarez, my neighbor, would receive Frank's old truck if she wanted it, because she had been the one driving me to urgent care when my children were too busy to answer. Helen asked if I was sure. I said no. Then I said yes. Both were true. She said, "You are allowed to revise a will because your understanding has changed." That sentence gave me permission I should not have needed. I signed the updated documents 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I also wrote a letter to my children, to be given when appropriate. Helen suggested waiting until after the holiday if I wanted one last chance to observe without announcing. "I don't want to test them," I said. Helen looked at my holiday ledger. "Barbara, they have been taking the test for years." Thanksgiving came. The one that began at 5:15 in the morning and ended with my children dividing my house while I washed dishes. This time, I watched differently. When David arrived late and criticized the kitchen layout, I wrote it down on a notepad tucked inside the pantry. When Michael joked that Mom's turkey is always better with enough gravy, I wrote it down. When Amy said, "I wish we could freeze this house in time," while handing me her daughter's dirty plate, I wrote it down. When Lauren mentioned probate, I wrote it down. When they left plates on the dining table, I took a photograph. Not because I planned to shame them online, because I wanted to remember clearly. At 10:15 that night, after hearing them discuss the house, I walked into the living room. They stopped talking, not because they were ashamed, because they had not realized I could hear. David smiled too quickly. "Mom, we were just talking." "Yes," I said. "I heard." Amy looked nervous. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of." I looked toward the kitchen. "Interesting timing." Michael laughed lightly. "Come on, Mom, don't get weird." Weird. I had cooked for 15 hours. They had speculated about my estate before dessert plates were cleared, but I was weird. I said, "Before anyone leaves, I need help cleaning the kitchen." Silence. Actual silence. Amy glanced at her children. They're exhausted. So am I. David checked his watch. "Mom, it's late." Yes. Lauren said, "We can help for a few minutes." A few minutes. I nodded. Good. No one moved. That was the final answer. I smiled softly. "Never mind." Amy said, "Mom." "No, go home." Michael stood. "You sure?" "Yes." They left within 12 minutes. The kitchen remained exactly as they had left it. I did not clean it that night. For the first time in 40 years of hosting, I left the mess. I walked upstairs, washed my face, put on my nightgown, and went to bed. At 3 in the morning, I woke and almost went downstairs out of habit. Instead, I turned over and whispered into the dark, "Nobody leaves her with the wreck." Then I slept. The next morning, I called Helen. "Send the letters," I said. She did, by email and certified mail. The subject line was, "Updated estate planning letter." My children called in birth order. David first, at 9:21. "Mom, what is this?" "Good morning, David." "Why did I get a letter from your attorney?" "Because I updated my estate plan." "You changed the house?" "Yes." "What does that mean?" "It means the house will not be left to the 3 of you outright." Silence. Then, very controlled, "Why?" "Read the letter." I did read the letter. "Then you know why?" His voice lowered. "Mom, making emotional estate decisions after a holiday argument is not wise." I looked at the kitchen, still dirty in the morning light. This was not after one holiday argument. This was after years of evidence. Evidence? Yes. "Mom, you're being dramatic." There it was. The word, always available, when a woman stopped serving quietly. I said, "David, you discussed my house value while I was washing your plate." He said nothing. I continued. "You asked about resale during dinner. You brought up probate before helping clear the table. You have had more interest in managing the house than maintaining a relationship with the woman who lives in it." "That is unfair." "No," I said, "it is exact." He hung up first. Michael called at 10:05. "Mom, is David freaking out over nothing?" "No." "So the letter is real?" "Yes." "Come on. You're not really giving money to a trade scholarship instead of your own kids." "I am giving some to my grandchildren, some to charity, and some fixed amounts to my children." "But not the house?" "No." He exhaled. "Mom, that's Dad's house too." "Yes. That is why part of it will support students learning trades in his name." That's not what he would have wanted. I felt anger rise, clean and bright. "Do not tell me what Frank would have wanted while you leave me alone in the kitchen he used to clean." Michael went quiet. Then, softly, "Mom." "No. You do not get to use your father as an inheritance argument after ignoring the example he set." He said nothing. Amy called crying at 11:30. "Mom, are you punishing us?" "No, Amy. It feels like punishment. That is because you expected something I never promised." "We're your children." "Yes." "Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means I loved you, raised you, fed you, helped you, hosted you, remembered your children's birthdays, and opened my home for decades." She sobbed. "Then why?" I looked at the blue serving bowl still sitting dirty in the sink. "Because love is not the same as leaving you my house." She whispered, "I don't understand." "I know. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever served people for years, and then watched them confuse your service with ownership, you know exactly what that morning felt like. It was not about one Thanksgiving. It was about the quiet accumulation of being used, overlooked, and then expected to reward the behavior. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me what moment made you realize love and entitlement are not the same thing. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. The letter itself was not cruel. I want that understood. It said, "My dear children, I love you. I have always loved you. This estate update is not the result of anger, but of clarity. For years, I have hosted, cooked, cleaned, and maintained the family home as though keeping it available were my duty. I did so willingly at first, joyfully often, and then quietly out of habit. Recently, I have realized that many of you value the house as an inheritance more consistently than you value my effort in keeping it a home. Your father believed care was shown by work, not entitlement. He never left me alone with the labor of family life. I have missed him every holiday not only because he was my husband, but because he was my partner. Going forward, my estate plan reflects my values: education, service, grandchildren's futures, and respect for the home Frank and I built. You will each receive a defined inheritance. You will not inherit the house outright. I hope this gives you an opportunity to examine what you believe family means while I am still alive. Love, Mom." David called it manipulative. Michael called it extreme. Amy called it heartbreaking. Lauren called it legally interesting, which told me David had put her on speaker. Ruth Alvarez called it magnificent. She came over at 1 that afternoon, with rubber gloves and a casserole. "I heard yelling through the walls," she said. "You live next door, not inside my phone. Your windows were open. It's November. You were heated." She walked into the kitchen, looked at the mess, and nodded. "Good, you left it." "I did." "Proud of you." Then she put on gloves and stood at the sink. "You don't have to do that," I said. "I know," she said. "That's why it counts." That sentence nearly undid me. We cleaned together. Not because my children deserved rescue. Because I deserved a clean kitchen and company that did not require asking 3 times. That December, I did not host Christmas Eve. I sent a message to the family group chat. I will not be hosting Christmas Eve this year. I am taking a break. I hope each of you enjoys the holiday in whatever way works best for your household. David replied, "So that's it? You're canceling family traditions now?" I replied, "I am changing my labor." Michael sent, "Where are we supposed to go?" I replied, "You each have homes." Amy wrote, "The kids will be devastated." I replied, "Then you can create something for them." No one answered for a while. Then Amy wrote, "I don't know how to make your cinnamon rolls." I typed, "I can send the recipe." She replied, "It won't be the same." I stared at that sentence for a long time. No, it would not. That was the point. Christmas Eve came quietly. I went to Ruth's house for soup. We watched an old movie, drank tea, and ate store-bought cookies without anyone complaining they were not homemade. I came home at 9, sat by the tree I had decorated only halfway because I liked it that way, and felt lonely. Freedom can feel lonely at first. That does not make it wrong. On Christmas morning, Amy sent a photo of her kitchen covered in flour. Her daughter Sophie had icing on her nose. The cinnamon rolls looked uneven, slightly burned on the edges, and wonderful. Amy wrote, "I understand now why you started the dough the night before." I smiled. Progress sometimes begins with yeast. David did not speak to me for 3 weeks. Michael sent a funny meme on New Year's Day and pretended nothing had happened. Amy called in January and asked if she could come over alone. I said yes. She arrived with the blue serving bowl. That startled me because I had not realized she had taken it home after Thanksgiving leftovers. She held it in both hands like an apology. "I found it in my cabinet," she said. "I'm sorry, I didn't even rinse it right away." I took the bowl. "Thank you for bringing it back." She sat at my kitchen table and cried, not loudly, tiredly. "I didn't know how much you did." "Yes, you did," I said gently. "You just didn't have to feel it." She nodded, wiping her face. "That's fair." It was the first time one of them said that. She continued, "When I had to make Christmas breakfast, I kept thinking, Mom did this every holiday for decades. And we just arrived. Yes. I'm sorry." "For what specifically?" She looked at me. That question had become important in my life. For arriving late. For not bringing what I promised. For letting you cook while I said I was overwhelmed. For leaving you with dishes. For talking about the house like it was already ours. That apology mattered. It did not rewrite the will, but it mattered. I poured coffee. She stayed 2 hours. Before she left, she said, "Will you teach me the stuffing?" I smiled. "Which one?" She laughed through tears. "Both." In February, Michael came over with a toolbox. Not Frank's, his own cheap one from a hardware store. "I'm here to fix the basement stair rail," he said. I looked at him. "Are you?" "Yes." "Do you know how?" He hesitated. "Not really." I handed him Frank's old shop manual. "Then start by reading." He spent 3 hours fixing one rail badly, then better. We had to redo one bracket. He swore twice. I corrected him 4 times. At the end, the rail was solid. He wiped sweat from his forehead. "Dad made this stuff look easy." "No," I said. "You made not watching look easy." He nodded slowly. "I deserved that." "Yes." He looked around the basement. "I'm sorry about Thanksgiving." I waited. "For talking about the house like you weren't in it." That was specific enough. "Thank you." He came back the next month to clean gutters. Progress sometimes wears work gloves. David was hardest. David had the most to lose because he had already imagined managing the estate. He did not need the money the way Michael sometimes did. He needed control. My will change had taken away the future meeting where he would sit at the head of the table and explain what was rational. He sent emails, long ones. He expressed concern about my, quote, recent emotional decision-making. He suggested a family mediation. He attached articles about estate planning fairness. He said unequal treatment could create sibling conflict. I replied once, "David, the current plan is legally sound and reflects my wishes. I am open to repairing relationships. I am not open to renegotiating my estate through pressure." He did not respond for 10 days. Then he showed up on a Sunday afternoon without Lauren. I almost did not open the door, but Jasper barked, and David looked through the glass like a boy who had lost his map. I let him in. He stood in the foyer, hands in his coat pockets. "This house smells exactly the same," he said. "Roast chicken." "No, I mean home." I waited. He looked uncomfortable. "I talked to Lauren." I assumed. "She thinks I'm handling this badly." "Lauren is correct." He almost smiled, then didn't. We sat in the living room. He looked at the fireplace, the family photos, the corner where Frank's chair used to be. "I thought I was being responsible," he said. "With the house?" "Yes." "I know. I look at assets all day. People make terrible decisions because they don't plan. I thought I was helping. You were planning around me instead of with me." He nodded. "I know that now." "Do you?" He looked at me. "I heard you in my head after Thanksgiving. While I was washing your plate, I couldn't get away from it." I said nothing. He swallowed. "I am sorry I made you feel like the house mattered more than you." "David, you didn't make me feel that. You showed me that." His eyes filled. That surprised me. David rarely cried, even as a child. "I don't want that to be true," he said. "I know." "But it was?" "Yes." He nodded. "I'm sorry." "For what specifically?" He breathed out slowly. "For treating your work as tradition instead of labor. For discussing the estate while you were cleaning. For assuming my financial experience gave me more authority over your home than your own wishes. For not answering when you fell." That last one cracked something. He had remembered. I looked away. "Thank you." He said, "I don't care about the house." I looked back at him. "Don't lie to improve the moment." He blinked, then laughed once, sadly. "Fine, I care about the house. I care because it feels like Dad and childhood and proof that we still have something that didn't change. That is honest. But it isn't mine." "No." "And it isn't you." "No." He nodded. "I'm working on understanding that." That was all I could ask. Spring arrived slowly. I hosted nothing. Not Easter. Not Mother's Day. On Easter, Amy hosted brunch. The eggs were overcooked. The ham was dry. The children loved it anyway. She looked exhausted by 2 in the afternoon and said, I owe you about 30 years of apologies. I said, start with dishes. Everyone helped, even David, even Michael, even Lauren, though she stacked plates in a way that made me nervous. On Mother's Day, my children took me to a restaurant. Not fancy, not performative. A local place with good soup and no one's kitchen to clean. They gave me a gift certificate for a cleaning service and a handwritten card. The card said, "Mom, thank you for building home. We are learning not to confuse it with the house," I cried in the restaurant, quietly, into a cloth napkin. I did not change the will back. Let me be very clear. Apologies do not automatically reverse consequences. Growth does not entitle people to restored access. My estate plan remained exactly as I had changed it. My children knew that. It was uncomfortable at first. Then, strangely, it became freeing. Once the house was no longer the prize, visits changed. Not all at once, but gradually. David came by without mentioning resale. Michael fixed things without joking about inheritance. Amy asked what to bring, and actually brought it. Lauren sent me a message one day that said, "I'm sorry for the probate comment. I sounded like a vulture in loafers." I liked that apology very much. The next Thanksgiving was different. Not at my house. At a rented community hall near the park. That was Amy's idea. "We can all contribute," she said. "Neutral ground." I laughed. "You make it sound like peace talks." She said, "Aren't they?" Everyone signed up for dishes, real ones. David made mashed potatoes and called me 3 times because the first batch was gluey. Michael smoked a turkey and was insufferably proud of it. Amy made both stuffings from my recipes. Lauren made a salad that actually appeared. Trisha brought pies from a bakery and admitted it without shame. The grandchildren set tables. Paul organized chairs. I brought cranberry sauce and the blue serving bowl, empty. At the hall, Amy took it from me. "What's this for?" "Mashed potatoes." She looked at the bowl. "Grandma Evelyn's?" "Yes." She held it carefully. Then she said, "I'll wash it myself afterward." I believed her. At dinner, David stood with a glass of water. "I want to say something before Mom tells me speeches make food cold." I almost smiled. He looked at me. Last Thanksgiving, we behaved badly. We arrived as guests to a home Mom maintained alone, criticized what she made, left her with the work, and discussed what we thought we might receive someday, while forgetting she was still giving right then. "We are sorry." The room was quiet. Michael added, "And the turkey was not dry." Everyone laughed. I did too, Amy said. "It was a little dry." "Traitor," Michael said. The laughter felt different. Not sharp, shared. After dinner, everyone cleaned. I tried to help, and Sophie, my granddaughter, took a sponge from my hand. "Grandma, you sit." I almost cried again. Instead, I sat not because I could not work, because someone else finally could. That night, when I went home, Jasper greeted me at the door like I had been gone for a month. The house was quiet. The kitchen clean because I had not destroyed it, feeding 15 people alone. The blue serving bowl sat on my counter, washed and dried, with a note from Amy tucked inside. I remember now. That was all it said. That was enough. The house is still mine. I still live here. The pantry door still has the children's height marks. Frank's chair is gone, but his books are still on the shelf. The kitchen is still ugly, though David offered to help pay for a renovation, and I told him I would consider it if he promised never to say resale while inside it again. He promised. I may renovate next year. For me. Not for value. For me. The trust remains. The scholarship fund is ready. The meal program will receive its portion. My grandchildren will have education funds. My children will receive what I chose to leave, not what they assumed they were owed. Some people may think, that is harsh. I think it is honest. My mother's blue bowl is back in the cabinet now, on the middle shelf where I can reach it easily. Sometimes I take it down and run my thumb along the painted flowers. I think of my mother, who gave until she disappeared. I think of Frank, who never let me carry the whole load alone. I think of my children, who are learning late but still learning. and I think of myself, a woman who finally understood that being the heart of the family does not mean continuing to pump while everyone else takes the blood for granted. My family made me cook Thanksgiving alone, then complained I didn't leave them the house. And when they learned that the home they treated like a future asset had been redirected towards service, education, and the grandchildren they claimed to care about, they finally had to face the truth. You cannot inherit what you refuse to honor. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been the holiday maker, the cook, the cleaner, the planner, the one who remembers allergies, birthdays, side dishes, chairs, and cleanup, while everyone else calls it tradition. If Barbara's story reached you, I hope you remember that love is not measured by how much labor people can extract from you before they start discussing what they will get when you are gone. You are allowed to change the menu. You are allowed to change the locks. You are allowed to change the will. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the truth that finally gets served. So tell me, if your family treated your holidays like a service and your home like a future inheritance, would you keep hosting, or would you change the will and let them learn what care really costs?